Hello and welcome to Deep Impact, a deep dive into Oddbow's most underappreciated work, 5 years on. Coming up next is Elliot Diebold.
Thanks, Ruben. So today we're tackling Damages 2.2.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just get straight into it, I guess.
Yeah, so Damages 2.1 ended with Blake making an offer of demonic amnesty for 3 people, and we kind of see the immediate follow-up to that.
Yeah.
Basically, everybody is trying to keep their cool, but has some minor tell that they're spooked by it.
Yeah. And so I mean, he specifically points out the Duchamps as being good at hiding their emotions.
Yep. Makes sense.
Which I guess makes
Chantresses.
I could see it going the other way too. Presumably, when they're so focused on magical relationships, I could see them sort of not really focusing as much on physical tells, and not caring themselves. But I mean, also
the kind of character that's like puts a lot of effort into like seeding charts, but isn't good at actually having human relationships.
I guess.
Just as an example.
Just focused on other things than their facial expressions.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess you have to be good at it just seems like having a good poker face is critical in the world of practitioners, so it makes sense.
I don't think I'm ever going to get sick of just how much of being a practitioner is like acting
bluffing.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I also like he specifically points out like Johannes is smiling because the whole thing, and then Maggie kind of leans forward interested, and like those are constantly the two sort of outsiders that he's been getting told are more trouble than they're worth, but they're sort of the only ones who seem even remotely interested in dealing with him.
But I mean, the person who's telling him that they're more trouble than they're worth are like Laird, and I guess maybe the book, Granny's book, right?
Yeah, Rose alluded to Johann specifically. It doesn't really seem like she even had much to say on Maggie, but yeah.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, and we'll kind of get into this a bit later in the arc as well, in the chapter, but when there's so kind of established, powerful families, Johannes and Maggie, who aren't that, are obviously going to be, the outsiders and the chaotic ones, but they're also, for Blake, who is also an outsider, they're the most likely people to want to band together with him because they're, not established and powerful.
Yeah, and I mean, Blake sort of brings this up later in the chapter. I guess I'm skipping ahead, but like, I think Rose specifically calls out that Blake is technically part of the old guard to Maggie. And Maggie's just sort of like, yeah, but are you though? Like, you clearly, you're all alone. You're all alone and you know fucking nothing. Which I thought was a great little moment.
So the immediate follow-up to Blake's making his offer is Ava, who's one of the witch hunters, basically asks, hey, can I interpret that as a threat so I can kill Blake? Which, man, like, Ava's an interesting character.
I mean, she seems pretty violent, which I like. I'm already pretty interested to learn more about her. But this really sells me. Really sells me on the whole idea Rose had about wanting to become a witch hunter, because it seems like they're pretty crazy powerful in that they seem to be immune to a lot of stuff. Like the fact that these two are just sort of willing to execute people and everything for the practitioners in the area, and they're so confident about everything, seems to imply that witch hunters have pretty solid protection. So Rose may have been onto something there.
Well, I think that they definitely have. You see their advantages here, but the disadvantages they're like empowered by the other people in the town, right? Like if they didn't have the kind of implicit support of everybody else, especially the Behaims and the Duchamps, it wouldn't really work. And so I think Blake and Rose's idea of becoming witch hunters, I don't know, it wouldn't work in the same way as these two witch hunters do, because they wouldn't have the support of the town.
No, but obviously the fact that they can just go into practitioners' houses and they can kill people during the council meeting, which apparently no one else can do, is a pretty big sign that they've got some real advantages up their sleeves.
Yeah, I wonder if Blake and Rose hadn't awakened, would they have been able to kind of mess with the council meeting, or maybe there's some other things going on there. Anyway, let's continue, because we've been talking about this first paragraph for a while. So basically people start reacting to to Blake's offer, and he kind of sees them starting to negotiate and plan, and so he kind of starts to panic a bit, and he throws in another deal, and another impulse that he didn't even run past Rose this time, which was he basically says, "Oh, I'll protect you even if you try and come after me if you tell me who killed Molly. Reveal who killed Molly, and you can fuck over me, and I won't even do anything to you." You know.
Yeah, it definitely comes from this deal comes from a place of security and confidence.
Yeah, it's man. It does come across kind of desperate, and the thing I like about this is, you know, he brings it up, and later on the people are kind of discussing the deal that he's offered. No one really mentions this other deal. Like, it's just almost immediately forgotten about by everybody. They're just like, what is going on here with this guy?
Yeah, and I mean, like, there's right before he sort of gives the deal, he sort of goes, I have something else to say. And then there's actually like an ellipsis drawn in the text. And then he just kind of throws it out there. So I think it was pretty obvious to everyone that this was just him throwing something out last minute, and nobody even seems to have taken it seriously.
Yeah, he's really off the cuffing it here. So Blake was obviously hoping that these deals would sow some disharmony amongst all the practitioners, but Laird just kind of immediately starts planning out who should take it and who shouldn't take it, and like how to maximize the advantage that Blake has just opened himself up for here, which is great. Laird says, "Oh, you know, I reckon my family's fine. The Duchamps, yeah, we're probably fine. Maggie, Johannes, Briar, Girl, Mara, you guys should probably take it." And he's like trying to pressure them into taking it, and because he wants them to take it, they're like, no, we won't take it, and Blake's just kind of like, fuck.
Yeah, Laird does a great job of turning this into a situation where it's pretty clear if they had taken it, he'd be fine with it, and when they don't take it, well, then it just means that Blake's achieved nothing. So he turns it around, and this is our first. This is the first time I can think of where we've seen large groups of practitioners really interact. You know, so there's like you're constantly seeing all this double speak, but then also because everyone has to tell the truth, sometimes there isn't anything you can double speak, so people just say stuff. Like, you know, when Maggie calls out that Laird's probably setting a trap for them by telling them to take it, he's just kind of like, well, yeah, this is a trap, but it's mostly for Blake. Which is just the casualness and confidence of that statement is hilarious.
Yeah, I love Laird as, I'm not going to say a villain, but as a character, you know, he's just like, sometimes he's just so on the level. It's very fun to interact with.
Yeah, so far I wouldn't really classify any of the practitioners we've seen as really villains or heroes. It's just a selfish world, and everyone's just kind of selfish. There's no heroes or villains. Yeah, totally. There's just everyone looking out for themselves, mostly.
Yeah. So the only real thing that Blake's deals have done after Laird successfully diffuses them is he accidentally offends Patrick, and clearly Patrick's upset by this, and Laird sees the value in keeping Patrick, you know, roughly on side, and kind of has to rapidly try and do some negotiations to save face. But he doesn't do very well at it.
No.
He kind of he's trying to like offer things, and Patrick's like, nah, not going to go for that. So eventually, Sandra, the kind of head of the Duchamp family, steps in to help him out.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, this was a risk that Blake took, just sort of jumping in with everyone. Yeah. Like, he had no idea what was happening. And he just kind of lucks out to this one bad thing, which they just easily smooth over. Yeah,
but like, it's easy to think, maybe it's just hindsight, or we're kind of outside of the story so we can think more clearly about this, but if Blake had kind of thought more about this plan, even if he had just had it at that moment, he could have done it in a better way, right? Like, he didn't have to run up and do it immediately. He could have approached people individually during the 3 hours after the council meeting and make these deals to them individually, so they don't know, they can't like immediately collaborate or stuff like that. And like, maybe it wouldn't have worked, but it does feel like it would have had more of a chance at success.
Yeah, well, he had no idea how these council meetings worked. So like, you know, he got caught off guard by something that he might have known if he just waited, you know, a little bit longer to have a crack.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe I'm being too hard on him, but it does feel like, just slow down, Blake. Like, that was an okay idea, but you kind of messed it up by rushing into it.
Yeah.
we get in the bit where Laird is kind of trying to save face with Patrick. We get, I think, my favorite line so far, where Patrick accidentally confuses Laird with his dad, whose name is Amon. And Laird corrects him, and Patrick says, "Amon, Laird, lame Erhard, no matter." Yeah. It's just this beautiful little wordplay that's like, man, that's tight, Patrick.
But that's totally the start of this. I guess you just call it a roast of Laird, where he just lists off how long everyone in Laird's family has left to live, I think.
Yeah, he's kind of like saying, "Oh, I'm eternal, so what is your amount of lives compared to mine? You know, you'd be alive for like maybe 20 years, your wife maybe 40." And then he gets more and more specific about each of Laird's children to the point that it's pretty clear that he's saying, well, this kid has that many years left to live, this kid has that many years, and it's just so stone cold.
Yeah,
man.
And nobody really reacts to it, like even Laird or his kids or anything, which either tells me this is known or they just know that it's some sort of bullshit. I don't know. I thought like, others couldn't lie. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Is it bullshit, or is it just like they are trying to save face? It's very, either way, it's not great for the Bohemes. Anyway, so once Laird has saved sufficient face with Patrick, the meeting kind of continues, and we do a bit of a skip ahead because, there is one other thing that just kind of comes out of nowhere here, which is they call a vote to have Maggie executed for breaking their equivalent of the statute of secrecy. Just out of nowhere. It's like, okay, next point of order, let's execute Maggie, all in favor.
Yep.
Yeah. And 2 people vote for her. The Briar girl, who you get the sense would just vote to execute anybody.
Yeah. She just seems like a sort of chaotic force. Yeah.
Yeah, but one of the Boheme boys, young, like, teenage boys, also votes to kill her, and then kind of looks back at her, and she like rolls her eyes at him. Did you get a like flirty vibe from this?
No, my first thought was that he was the target of whatever her public magic was. Like, you know, she may have just been been lightly fucking with him, like just some silly spell to make him trip, or I don't even know, but because the whole thing's just so weird and casual and petty that would fit in so well that it's just, she just did some minor spell at one of the other ones, and so now she's basically, there's a vote on whether or not to kill her. It's great.
Yeah. I like your suggestion for what it could be as well, because then it kind of does paint this picture of like, she did some minor thing and the retaliation is, well, maybe we'll kill you for it. And that's just kind of how the wealth of power that these families have operates in this town.
I also you seem to have skipped over the line where when the vote fails, the Duchamp lady leaves Maggie with a warning, saying that she thinks that the vote might have failed because we're so soon after another execution, which I think is just meant to make us think that maybe Molly was executed. Which I don't think quite adds up and seems too obvious, but yeah, I mean, that's definitely, I feel like that's a line that is meant to stand out and is going to come back later.
Yeah, I don't know who else. I mean, we haven't been introduced to anyone else who's disappeared recently. So
no, I can't think of any names in Rosa's Black Book that were mentioned that have been missing or anything. So yeah. I'm not sure.
If so, that means the witch hunters were probably a pretty good candidate for Molly's murderers. So the meeting kind of skips ahead and ends, and then they call it to a close, and everybody heads out. Blake and Rose kind of start heading home, and Johannes and Maggie just kind of walk up to them and start chatting to them. Kind of idly chit-chatting.
Yeah, while their goblin children throw each other at lampposts and stuff.
Yeah, there's goblins, there's those weird little child ghosts that Johannes seems to just amass.
Collect?
Yeah, creepy. Collect, I think. Yeah, you're right. Collect gives it the right vibe of creepiness.
Yeah.
And Johannes basically is talking to them and kind of half drip feeding them information and half kind of offering to tell them things for a price. And I get the sense that he's kind of trying to put himself in their good books to an extent by being not overtly helpful, but vaguely helpful. You know?
Definitely. I think he's also trying to get a read on them, like see how well they think. I think there's going to be a recurring theme in this book where conversations are trying to do more than one thing at a time. And that's sort of the vibe I got here. Is he is kind of he comes across as helping them, but it's also he's pretty clearly fishing to see what they do and don't know and what they can and can't figure out.
Yeah, see what kind of ways their minds think, you know.
Yeah.
And actually, on that line, there's a good bit in this conversation where Blake is kind of, it feels like the conversation's starting to wind up and Blake's ready to go, all right, well, see you guys later. And Rose kind of prompts him to actually start pushing his own agenda a bit, where she says, speaking of, you have the one measure that was put in place. And she's kind of referring to the deals he offered literally, you know, at most a few hours ago. And he's kind of already forgotten what she's talking about. This little bit just really emphasizes to me, Blake is so bad at deception. He just doesn't seem to suit this world that much. And Rose is kind of prompting him to say, hey, start trying to do something, Blake.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, we'll kind of get back to this a bit later, but it really gives me this vibe, this one moment in particular, that Blake is just kind of out of place and Rose is just so naturally better at this part of being a practitioner, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, definitely, you know, she's had that extra time to study. That might be part of it. But yeah, Blake just kind of seems to go with the flow a bit too much.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like he actually is committed to putting into place any of his plans that he's been starting to develop. Anyway, Johannes leaves and takes most of the others, the goblins. Blake and Rose kind of walk back with Maggie, and she still has two big old goblins flanking them.
Yeah.
And actually, before Johannes leaves, he points out, which is probably worth going over, that he says to Rose that she would find good company if she visits him in the North End. And Maggie kind of explains this is... yeah. Maggie kind of explains that the North End is... And she describes it as like an other amusement park. You get the implication there that they can seemingly just like hunt humans and do whatever the fuck they want up there.
Which is kind of crazy because, like, who's living in the North End, you know? Like, this is half of the town or something. Yeah. Like, are there just people there getting tortured all the time? And why is that not, like, national news, you know? Like, yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, this really emphasizes just how much power Johannes must have, having that big of an area as his domain, if he's able to just kind of control it so effectively.
Yeah.
Rose points out, you know, I'm not into that kind of thing, basically. And Maggie and Blake and Rose all start talking, and Rose kind of asks Maggie what she wants. What is she looking for to try and find a bargaining chip? And Maggie's response is that she's relatively new. She doesn't come from an old guard like the Duchamps or the Behaims or the Thorburns. And she wants knowledge. Because she's an outsider, she doesn't have any knowledge, and she wants to kind of amass power that way. Blake says, "Hey, I'd be willing to make deals with you. We have a big library."
Yeah. I mean, this is a pretty sensible deal to try and make, I guess. I mean, I guess it depends what information he's going to give her. Because what sort of happens is, you know, Blake asks Maggie what did Laird mean when he called her a terrorist. And she doesn't answer the question. She just sort of argues about the definition of what a terrorist is, but doesn't necessarily say that she didn't do something terrible to earn that title.
Yeah, and she kind of says, well, you know, by that definition of a terrorist, Laird is a terrorist and Sandra is a terrorist. And it's like, well, yeah, and they've done bad things. And so
exactly.
We would want to know about the bad things that they had done that meant you could be able to say that and not be lying, right? Like... Sure, but there's got to be some kernel of something there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a very unsatisfying answer, but maybe we'll find out more about that later. So the other thing that Maggie says that I just want to point out is she says, if I could say anything crude, I'd say it now. I can't even allude to it. And she's trying to swear. She's trying to say that Blake kind of dangling the idea of a magical library in front of her has given her blue balls.
Yeah.
She can't swear. Seemingly, and there's an earlier part in the chapter as well where Maggie swears by saying "drat you," and Blake thinks about how weird it is.
Yeah, I mean, it was
a little character beat.
as soon as it was pointed out how odd it was, I was like, oh, did she lose her ability to swear? And it seems it goes even further than that, where it's just anything crude. And I mean, and then poor Miros is so innocent and he's like, oh, you're feeling sad because you're blue, which is a little hilarious moment.
Yeah. Classic Miros.
But yeah, I'm just assuming Maggie stuffed up early on in her, what seems to be a solo career and accidentally lost the ability to be crude, which is probably has a lot of potential to be hilarious, as we've already seen.
Yes. So, Maggie, they kind of get back to where they have to part ways. Maggie goes one way and Blake and Rose head back to the house. And as soon as they're alone, Blake has kind of been able to tell since they left for the council meeting that something's been wrong. And he asks how she's doing, and she doesn't really answer. She just kind of dodges the question and then compares their relationship to a black slave being friends with the child of a slave owner as a way of kind of pointing out, I'm fine, but we can't have a good relationship because there's just such an imbalance of power.
Yeah. I wouldn't have really classified her as dodging the question so much. I mean, she kind of does, but she almost makes it worse because she's like, I'm not okay, you're not okay, we're not okay. Like, as a pair, we're not okay. It's like she almost makes it worse by pointing out all the different ways they're not okay before finally answering the question.
Yeah, it's a good point.
But I don't know, because she does kind of have a point here about the power imbalance. I guess the difference in her analogy, I would say, is that a slave owner always kind of has the option to set a slave free. I don't know how Blake is meant to do the equivalent of that. But yeah, apart from that, I mean, I guess she has a point. And I mean, especially because Blake's first thought after she has this kind of complaint is he just wants to remind her that she's meant to be playing ball, which is an oddly controlling kind of thought.
It gives you the vibe of just tugging on the leash a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, it kind of proves her point that was his first thought, but I don't know if he quite clicks into that.
Yeah. It's a little skeevy, isn't it? Anyway, Rose kind of points out what's on her mind, which is that she's kind of found out about vestiges, a type of other called vestiges. And that's what Laird referred to her as earlier during the council meeting as well. They are kind of flawed clones of people that can be molded. So their gender changed or their memories changed. And it seems pretty bang on for Rose's whole situation, right?
Yeah, I mean, it does seem to be a very good explanation for what has happened here.
Yeah, but the thing about vestiges is they are temporary, so they take more and more power to maintain and will deteriorate over time and implied dissipate or die or something.
At which point Blake sort of finds that out and he's like, I'm going to try and help you. And her response is, I don't need rescue, Blake. And I mean, Blake and I sort of had the same response to that, which is kind of like, yeah, you do. Like, what are you talking about?
I think, I don't know. It's so hard to get a read on Rose. She's clearly having a rough time at the moment, and she's basically just found out she has a terminal illness, essentially. And so you can understand that she's a bit on edge, but
well, what stood out to me really about the I don't need rescue Blake line is I can't really think of a way that is not true. And I thought she was meant to have taken this whole oath, during her awakening, so she shouldn't be able to lie. So either, she has made that up and she can still lie, or I don't know, she knows something else. It's just the whole thing is just that part stood out to me for that reason, but definitely. Apart from that, the whole thing is just kind of like she's just in a shit mood because she's just basically found out she's got a terminal illness, like you said, and is trying to come to terms with that while being trapped in a mirror. Yeah, terminal kind of 2D-ifying illness of sorts where it kind of cuts you off from the world. I mean, anyway, so Blake's first reaction is, I'm going to help you, right? And there's kind of two parts to it, right? There's definitely the part where he does have this hero mentality, he just wants to help her because it's the right thing to do, and he cares for her to some extent. That definitely seems to be in his head. That's his first thought, is he just wants to help her for the right reasons.
Yeah, it is worth pointing out. That's the first thought. The second thought is, I need you, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think this chapter kind of points out in a few different places, Rose gets this world a bit better than Blake does. She's bailed him out of a few things. She's asked the right questions. She's put together some of the pieces. He needs her. Yeah.
And I mean, she points out that she only believes it because of that selfish second reason, which, since we're in Blake's head, we know probably isn't really fair, but whatever it takes, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like this is the way their relationship goes. Rose realizes or tries to come to terms with another aspect of her terrible situation, and Blake reaffirms, like, I'm going to try and help you.
Yeah.
But so far, it seems like it's just getting worse and worse.
Yeah, well, I mean, in his defense, there do seem to be genuinely higher priorities constantly coming up.
Yeah. So the chapter ends next with them kind of making a plan of what their next move is going to be. They basically want to fuck with Laird to throw the Behames off their game. And the idea they have is to basically leak that Laird has admitted in front of witnesses to knowing about the murder of Molly Walker, in the hopes that he'll be taken in and interviewed and he won't be able to lie, and it'll probably not get him arrested, but at least fuck with him. And then they have the idea of getting the Behame children involved because they're not as good as, like, I don't know how to describe it, lying while telling the truth.
Yeah, or just just using misleading phrasing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they plan to somehow get the kids interrogated as well.
Yeah, so at least they're putting a little bit more thought into this plan before enacting it, which is nice. Like, Rose actually gets to have input, because I think bringing the children into it while a dark part of the plan is probably a good one, and that was her idea.
I like that Blake can now be involved with thinking about a plan and not immediately have to execute it. He can spend some time planning it out and shoring up the weaknesses.
Yeah. I like his response after Rose adds the children into it. He's like, "It's dirty," I said. I smiled. "Dirty is good." And I'm just, again, picturing Rose Sr. smiling up at them from wherever she is.
From whatever bad place she's gotten herself into. Yeah. And that's how the chapter ends.
Yeah. So we're ending yet another chapter on Blake scheming a plan, but this time putting one together a bit more before just implementing it on the fly. Yeah.
This time actually getting Rose involved, right? Which I think is kind of the theme of this chapter a bit, is Rose can help you, Blake. Like, use her a bit more, man.
Yeah.
She's good at this shit. Yeah. So we will see how this plan unfolds in the future. Or maybe we won't. I don't know what's going to happen next. So we wanted to dive into some of the comments from 5 years ago again, as we do every so often. I want to point out, this wasn't one comment that I picked out, but a kind of number of comments, and we're gonna talk about them here. Comments from a bunch of people, including Glassware, Chiro, Meister, Mayhem, and more, basically talking about shipping. Which is, shipping is what it is. Let's not get into that. But something about this story is Blake needs to get married in the next 5 years, right? Like, that was a requirement of his continued existence. Is if he doesn't get married in the next 5 years, he's fucked.
Yeah, and so, I think it specifically says that he's meant to get married to a man.
Yeah. But,
you're right. Wildbow has kind of put the idea in our heads that Blake needs to find someone to pair up with. So this was an inevitable result. It probably would have happened anyway. Yeah. But, yeah.
Not just that, though, this story... This story really sets up, these are the players in the story from the get-go. We literally we've just had a council meeting where we meet all the major characters, right? As far as we know. And so it's very easy to take a look at all the people we've just met this chapter and the fact that Blake needs to get married and just be like, well, who's it gonna be? So the two frontrunners at this point, from the comments that I saw, were Maggie, which makes sense because she's roughly his age and an outsider.
I actually saw. Sorry, I saw one comment which was like, Maggie is one of the few age-appropriate females, like aside from Rose, as if that clarification needed to be made, that she's not a candidate. Although I guess, the Thorburn family has done similar things in the past, so maybe it is. Maybe we do know clarifying.
We do know their family tree isn't as doesn't spread out as much as it should sometimes. The other primary candidate though that's brought up is Johannes, right? He's a man, first of all, so that kind of fits the bill there. But Grandma Rose specifically pointed out to find like a powerful bastard.
So he would seem to fit that.
I just liked how this story's been set up to promote shipping. Just fun, just a fun little thing, I guess.
Okay. And so then I found a comment. I had to dig pretty deep to find a comment that didn't have something to do with just speculating on either shipping or just Rose and the nature of Rose in general. But I eventually found one by Unmaker, who pointed out that a good candidate for Maggie's implement would be the little scrapbook she had with her. And I thought this was a really interesting insight because it maps very well with the idea that she wants knowledge. Because, we've already seen how implements sort of reflect your way of going about things. So I just like that as an insight or a possible early insight into her character, because it adds up to what we sort of know about her goals, which I thought was really cool.
I especially like the idea of it's a scrapbook, so it's designed to grow, right? Which is a very cool idea for an implement. Like, as you amass knowledge, your implement gets bigger and stronger, and presumably you do too. And it's kind of this cool feedback loop that would be very interesting to see be realized.
Yeah, I guess my only concern about it would be I think of books as being quite damageable. Like it's quite easy to break a book or rip out pages, which maybe doesn't bode well. But I mean, we'll see. This is all assuming that this prediction is correct.
Yeah. We shall see. We shall see in our next episode, Elliot, when we cover Damages 2.3.
Yes, that's
right.
Now,
when is that episode coming out again?
Cut here. That will be on Friday the 25th of January.
Okay, Friday the 25th of January. So come check back in with us then. But Elliot, what if people don't want to have to manually check things? Is there some way to stay up to date of our episodes without having to just manually check the subreddit?
You know what? I think there is. And that's to head to iTunes or Google Play or Stitcher or anywhere else where you can subscribe to MediaMD. And you can find the easiest way to do that is to just head to our website, MediaMDpodcast.com, where you'll find the page for Deep in Pact, and you can subscribe to us there.
Now, why is it called MediaMDpodcast.com, Elliot, if this show's called Deep Impact? What's going on there?
Yeah, well, MediaMD is the name of our other podcast that we've been running for a few years. And in fact, if you're listening to this the day it came out, you have less than 24 hours to wait before the next episode of MediaMD, which we'll be discussing Last Chance to See, a book by Douglas Adams and Mark, longer surname that I can't remember how to pronounce.
Carwadine.
That's it.
And it's at this point that I reveal that I actually knew the answers to those questions. I was just setting you up, Elliot. Yeah, we'll be talking about Last Chance to See, which is a book that I prescribed. It's a fun book. You should check out this episode tomorrow when this comes out, or it's already out if you're listening to this late, which some people do. If you want to read along with Pact with us, though, the best way to do that is read the story one chapter at a time, like we're doing it, and then leave your thoughts in the discussion threads. We'll link the discussion threads in the show notes right down below this episode in that description bit that podcasts have.
Yeah.
And I guess that's everything. We'll see you on the 25th, everybody, for Damages 2.3.
See ya.